The icy wind cut through his skin like invisible blades. Above the fjords, where the sky met the earth with ancient brutality, a name echoed through the legends: Skadi, the Eye of Tyr. He did not miss. Ever. His bow was an extension of his soul, and each arrow a death sentence guided by the gods. For years, he had brought victory to his clan, the Wolves of the North, and made his enemies fear even the sound of a string being drawn. But every legend has a price, and Skadi felt his own being exacted. He wanted peace. He wanted rest. But rest was something warriors like him did not come easily. As he hung up his bow and left the battlefield behind, Skadi believed he could finally live in silence, away from the blood and glory that defined him. But the gods are capricious, and men even more so. A message has reached him, a whisper carried on the treacherous wind, that his clan is being held captive and enslaved through betrayal. Now Skadi must choose between saving her people or leaving them behind. Skadi never knew his real parents. They said he was found as a baby, abandoned on the banks of a river, wrapped in wolf skins. Some whispered that he was the son of a forgotten god. Others believed he was just another orphan left by cruel fate. What was certain was that the wolf clan took him in, and he grew up among warriors, learning from an early age that strength and loyalty were the only currencies of value in the life of a Viking. But Skadi was not like the others. While the young men took up swords and axes, he felt that his weapon was something else. The bow called to him, and he answered. From an early age, Skadi trained more than anyone. In the harsh winters, he would stay in the forest shooting at improvised targets until his fingers bled. In the summer, he hunted tirelessly, perfecting his accuracy until no prey escaped. The clan began to notice. At 13, he was beating adult warriors in archery tournaments. At 15, he was already leading hunts. But what really made his name a legend was the first battle. The wolves were surrounded, with no chance of victory. Then, from a high position, Skadi fired arrows as if they were part of a divine force, cutting down enemy after enemy, without missing a single shot. After that day, no one saw him as a simple archer anymore. They said that his eyes saw beyond the human, that Tyr, the god of war and justice, had guided his aim. The warriors began to call him Eye of Tyr, and this name soon spread, carried by the fear of his enemies. Battle after battle, his legend grew. They said that where his arrow aimed, death was certain. But even the most skilled of warriors cannot escape the traps of fate forever. In the far north, where the cold punished even the most resilient and the winters seemed to never end, a legend of relentless warriors emerged, a name that made even the most fearless tremble: the Wolf Clan. They were not just a group of Vikings, but war hunters, predators in battle. Their attacks were like those of a pack of wolves, organized, meticulous and lethal. They never faced an enemy directly without first studying him, and when they attacked, they did so with terrifying ferocity, precision, and synchrony. While other Viking clans relied on brute force or unbridled fury, the wolves valued strategy, cooperation, and absolute loyalty among warriors. Each of them knew his place in the formation, as a wolf knows his role within the pack. Unlike other tribes that raided in a disorderly fashion, the wolves had a unique method. They surrounded their enemies, forced them to make mistakes, and attacked with relentless speed. They moved like shadows, emerging from the mists of dawn or the dark valleys of night. No enemy slept peacefully when they knew the wolves were near. The Wolf Clan was not just a military force. It was a society based on strength and survival. Its Jarl was chosen not just for blood, but for skill and courage. The leader had to prove, in battle and in wisdom, that he was worthy to lead the pack. Weakness was synonymous with death, and treason was the worst crime a wolf could commit. The training of the young began early. At the age of 7, boys and girls were thrown into the forest, forced to survive alone for a whole month. Anyone who returned showing signs of weakness or without having hunted their own food was considered unworthy of wielding a weapon. Only the strong could become warriors, and only warriors could be called wolves. At the age of 12, they began combat training. They fought against each other, with bare hands and wooden weapons. The most skilled were sent to the forge, where they learned to shape their own swords and spears. And at the age of 15, the first battles came. The young men were thrown onto the battlefield alongside the veterans, and only those who survived without hesitation could continue in the clan. Death was an honor, but cowardice was the true disgrace. And among all these warriors, there was one name that stood out, a name that the gods themselves seemed to have chosen. They say that Skadi was not like the others. From an early age, her vision was sharper, her reflexes faster, her mind more calculating. While the other young men trained their swords and spears, Skadi mastered the bow. Her arrows flew true as if guided by destiny itself. No prey escaped, no target was lost. His deeds were so great that soon the elders began to whisper that he was blessed by Tyr, the god of war and justice. They believed that Tyr had chosen Skadi as his tool, his champion in the land of men. And when his enemies saw him on the battlefield, when they realized that the first to fall was always the commander, when his troops were destroyed before they could even raise their shields, they began to call him Eye of Tyr. The name spread like the wind. They said he saw the future, that his aim never missed because he saw the end before the beginning. His arrows always found the heart of those who needed to fall. Many tried to challenge this legend, but they all ended the same way, fallen to the ground, with a black arrow through their skull. With Skadi as their champion, the wolf clan reached its peak. No village could resist, no fortress could stop them. Years and years later, they sailed through unknown seas, raided distant kingdoms, and always returned with the greatest loot, gold, weapons, slaves, and glory. With each battle won, their name was feared in more lands. The wolves destroyed entire fortresses without losing a single battle. They were fast, brutal, and led by an archer who never missed. With Skadi eliminating enemy commanders before the battle even began, the opposing forces became disorganized, and the pack sprang into action. It was a hunting war, and the wolves were the supreme predators. But the higher the climb, the greater the fall. Skadi began to realize that the wolf clan was no longer the same. The Jarl no longer fought for glory, but for greed. Battles were no longer to strengthen the clan, but to satisfy the desire for gold. The once united pack was beginning to become a pack of hungry wolves fighting over carrion. The archer, who had spent his life serving the gods and his people, began to question himself. How many more must die? How long could his soul endure this thirst for blood? It was then that Skadi made her decision. She would lay down her bow. She would abandon the path of war and seek her rest. But no wolf leaves the pack without consequences. Skadi's decision to abandon war and shun the life of raiding was met with utter silence. When he announced his choice before the council of elders, the looks that surrounded him were not of respect, but of distrust. To the wolves, a warrior who abandoned a battle was not just a man leaving. It was a broken link in the chain that held them together. He was at his peak. His reflexes were quicker than ever. His eyes saw the movement of an arrow cutting through the wind as if time dragged before him. His muscles, hardened by years of combat, were a weapon in their own right. But there was something stronger than his body, something that no amount of training could erase. The weight of time and the desire for something different. Skadi was not naive. She knew that a warrior of the wolf clan could never simply lay down his weapons and walk away. But with each battle, He felt he was fighting not for the clan, but for a growing emptiness within himself. The gold he had accumulated, the glory he had conquered, the blood he had spilled, none of it brought him satisfaction. And so he made his decision. He would head east, to a land that traders spoke of on their travels. They said the rivers were golden at sunset, and that the mountains hid forests that had never smelled blood. He didn't know if he would find peace, but he knew that there, at least, he could rediscover who he was beyond the warrior. His plan was simple: leave the pack before they could stop him. For weeks, Skadi prepared his departure in secret, accumulating supplies and choosing a path far from the clan's patrols. His arrows, which had previously been used to kill, would now be his guarantee of survival away from the war. But the night he was preparing to leave, something made him hesitate. Sitting near the campfire, he watched the other warriors, those who had fought by his side for years, men he had once called brothers. What would happen to them after he was gone? Would the clan hold out, or would it be devoured by the hunger for conquest that was growing within its Jarl? Over the past few years, Skadi had noticed subtle changes in her leader. Hakon, the Jarl of the Wolf clan, was no longer the fierce warrior who fought side by side with his men. His armor gleamed brighter than his axe. His hands held more cups of mead than swords. And worst of all, his gaze was always on something other than battle, riches, thrones, agreements whispered in the darkness. Skadi was not the only one who noticed this, but no one dared question it. In the world of the wolves, the Jarl's word was the only law that mattered, and those who disagreed, well, they simply disappeared. But Skadi had no time to dwell on that. Not anymore. For the first time, he chose himself over the clan. Before the first rays of sunlight had illuminated the camp, Skadi left. His bow was on his back. His bone-carved wolf was strapped to his neck, and his mind was fixed on the east. He did not know what lay ahead, but one thing was certain: he would not look back. As Skadi made her way east, Hakon, Jarl of the Wolf clan, was already making plans of his own. The men of the clan, hungry for plunder and glory, were unaware of the shadows moving around them. As they fought, as they drank, as they celebrated their victories, the very blood of the clan was being traded in silence. In the great court of King Albert, the monarch of the south, gold and promises were exchanged over cups of wine and treacherous smiles. Albert was an ambitious ruler, and the wolves had always been a threat to his kingdom. So a deal was struck. If Hakon would betray his own people, if he would weaken the clan from within, he would not only be spared, he would be rewarded. Gold would flow to him, lands would be granted, and instead of a feared barbarian leader, he would become a respected lord. But betrayal comes at a price, and as Skadi walked into the unknown, the fate of the Wolf clan was already being sealed in the shadows. After 3 long years of constant battle and challenge, the Wolf clan was now marked by the absence of its champion. Skadi had departed for the east, leaving behind the wild and familiar lands where she had fought, lived, and conquered. Her decision would eventually reverberate throughout the clan, but the story of Hakon the Jarl was far from settled. The winds of fate blow strong when it comes to ambition, and the great King Albert had known it. Hakon, ever shrewd, knew his golden moment had come, and he could not hesitate. The details of his pact with Albert began to be shaped in the shadows of his own stronghold. It was a dirty bargain, and Hakon knew it. But what was offered in return was far more than he could resist. With greedy eyes, Albert promised riches beyond imagination, lands from his eastern holdings, and even the autonomy to rule over the men who passed through his hands. The price? Simply hand over his own men, the clan's warriors, his trusted comrades, to become slaves under King Albert. This would be the tribute, the currency in exchange for the promised fortune. In his mind, Haken could already see the treasures piling up before him, and in his hands the future of his own lineage. The deal was finalized in a dark hall, out of sight of his men, out of sight of his clan. Albert looked Haken straight in the eye and assured him that with his help, the king's empire would expand even further, breaking any resistance that might arise along the way. However, the price would be high, and the consequences for those who had once served under Haken would be cruel. But the Jarl, with his mind obsessed with power and riches, sealed the pact with an icy handshake, in which there was no room for regret. Haken became a wealthy man, but in his soul, the weight of betrayal began to corrode the foundations of what remained of his honor. Meanwhile, in the east, Skadi's journey had begun. The man who had been the terror of the battlefield, the archer who never missed a single arrow, was now taking a completely different path. In the vast, icy east, Skadi found a new purpose. The years of glory in battle, where his precision and skill had secured the greatest victories and plunder, were behind him. In his new life, he would become the protector of the trade caravans, tasked with ensuring the safety of the trade routes that crossed the mountains and forests. He was no longer a warrior in direct combat, but a protective shadow against emerging threats, a defender of life and property. His time in the East was different. He had built a new reputation, no longer as a killer of warriors, but as a guardian of the caravans. Skadi fought bandits and raiders with the same skill with which he felled an enemy in combat, but his arrows now sought not destruction but protection. He felt the weight of the choice he had made, to leave his old life behind, but also the freedom that had come with it. His reputation as an unbeatable archer spread quickly, and he soon became a household name in the Eastern lands, one that was always associated with safety and trust. However, the East was a land of mystery, and there was something in its shadows that Skadi could not identify, something that called him to an even greater destiny. But as always, he would not miss the arrow he was given to release. Haken's decision, like Skadi's new life, was only just beginning to intertwine with their future. The balance between loyalty and ambition was becoming increasingly tenuous. Skadi lived in the East, living a simple life without great deeds. His role was that of a caravan guardian, protecting those who crossed the vast plains and treacherous terrain of the region. He was not a hero or a man of great renown, just a skilled warrior, fulfilling his duty with dedication. His life was quiet, far from the spotlight, but also far from the glories that a warrior might seek. One afternoon, as he was preparing for yet another journey, a young, exhausted messenger with a worried expression came to him. She brought a letter, and the seal that sealed it was unmistakable. It was the symbol of the Wolf clan, his people. Skadi felt something in his chest tighten, but he did not know what to expect. He broke the seal and read the words, and each sentence burned like hot iron in his mind. Skadi, son of the Wolf clan, a call to you. Haken the Jarl made a pact with King Albert. He gave up the Wolf clan in exchange for riches and a life of luxury, far from battle and suffering. Our people were imprisoned, enslaved. The price of our freedom was paid with our souls. Only you can break this pact and set us free. The words echoed in her mind, and a fury unbounded Skadi. Haken the Jarl, whom she had always known, had betrayed his own people for riches and a life of comfort. There was no honor, no respect, only a shameful exchange. The rage Skadi felt was like a wildfire, consuming him completely. His people, the Wolf clan, now lived in the shadows of Albert's rule, their members pawns in a power game. Without hesitation, Skadi threw the letter to the wind and began gathering her belongings. He grabbed his bow and mounted his horse, his heart burning with newfound determination. The simple life he had led in the East now seemed irrelevant to the need to free his people. There was no more time to waste. He headed north, never looking back. The journey would be long, full of dangers, but Skadi knew what she had to do. Hakon's pact had to be broken. The wolf clan had to be freed, and he would be the one to do it, not for honor, but for justice. Skadi finally reached the north, where the frozen and desolate land stretched out before her eyes. The journey there was arduous, with biting winds and treacherous trails, but her anger and determination kept her going. Skadi's heart beat with a single desire: to free her people from captivity and restore the honor of the wolf clan, stolen by Hakon's dirty pact with King Albert. She had reached what appeared to be the place where her clan was being held prisoner. There was no sign of Jarl Hakon or King Albert, but Skadi's eyes knew nothing. There were men, armed to the teeth, guarding a makeshift camp. The wolf clan was there, trapped but still alive, and the sight of them made them feel the weight of shame on their shoulders. The sight of her brothers and sisters in chains, guarded by mercenaries, burned into her soul. Skadi watched for a moment, her eyes sharp as razors. He felt the anger rising within him, an anger that could only be the response to what had been done to his people. But instead of screaming or attacking immediately, a mocking smile formed on his face. He knew exactly what to do. With a skill that only the Eye of Tyr himself possessed, Skadi drew his quiver and carefully selected his arrows. Each one was an extension of his will, imbued with the fury of a man who had been betrayed by those he should have trusted. He crouched down, taking the perfect stance, and with lethal precision, he began to fire. The arrows flew like a storm, striking their targets with such incredible speed that the guards did not even have time to react. It was as if a rain of arrows had fallen from the sky, swift and relentless. The sound of falling bodies was the only response to what Skadi was doing. Every guard, without exception, was silenced, as if death itself had become their shadow. As the last man fell to the ground, Skadi slowly rose to his feet. The sound of battle had ceased, and now there was only silence. The wolf clan, still imprisoned, was free. Skadi walked toward them, her bow still in hand, but her expression was cold, as if the fight had been nothing more than a simple step toward what truly mattered. She looked into the eyes of her brothers and sisters, now freed, and spoke firmly. "Now, let us go after Hakon. He will pay for tarnishing the honor of our clan." Skadi knew that the journey was not over yet. The real battle was yet to come, and it would not be fought against mercenaries or guards. Hakon and Albert would face the true weight of vengeance from a man whose clan had been sold for empty promises of power. Skadi would not rest until the honor of the wolf clan was restored, and he would be the steel that cut the pact that had imprisoned her people. After the liberation of the wolf clan, the tension in the air was palpable. Skadi, the Eye of Tyr, watched her brothers and sisters, now free, but still weakened by their time in captivity and slavery. The clan had been subjected to the worst kind of suffering, and it was not enough to simply rescue them. They needed to be given strength again, to restore not only their bodies, but also the mind and soul of each warrior. The following weeks were spent rebuilding. There were no grand celebrations, no cries of victory. Each one was absorbed in the need to reclaim their place as warriors. The prisoners' injuries were treated urgently, but mental recovery was the greatest challenge. Many had been humiliated, others had lost all confidence in the fight. But Skadi, always firm and relentless, knew that the real battle would begin not on the battlefields, but within each of her brothers. Over time, the clan's fortress was rebuilt from the inside out. The training fires were lit again, and the sounds of metal clashing against metal began to echo through the camp. Skadi, her silent leader, was there every step of the way, watching the men and women of the wolf clan rise again as if the past had never happened. There was something in her eyes now. The fire of war was being rekindled, a flame that had been extinguished by Hakon and Albert's betrayal but now burned with fury and a thirst for revenge. The days passed, and slowly, the warriors of the clan regained their strength, but not without sacrifice. The meals were simple but rich in nutrients, and the training methods required much more than physical skill. They required the awakening of the fighting spirit, the kind of spirit that would not surrender, the kind that would not bow before any tyrant. Skadi, however, did not allow herself to rest. She knew that time was an enemy as dangerous as any blade, and that Hakon and Albert would not remain silent for long. The plan was being forged in secret, and the moment of revenge was approaching. The ambush would be their only chance. The days that followed were spent in meticulous preparation. Skadi organized her troops, dividing them into small groups, and having each warrior trained in guerrilla and ambush tactics. This would not be an open battle. It would be a surefire strike, a swift and deadly attack. They would move in the shadows, like wolves, ready to devour their enemies before they knew what had hit them. Confidence and focus were being re-established, and finally, after weeks of preparation, Skadi gathered her clan together. They were ready. Hakon and Albert had no idea what awaited them. Hakon's betrayal would be paid for in blood. With the plan drawn up, Skadi looked into the eyes of each warrior, now renewed, now ready for battle. The mocking smile he had shown them earlier, after freeing them, was now transformed into an expression of pure determination. They would attack, and this time, there would be no forgiveness. The sharp north wind caressed the faces of the Wolf Clan warriors as they prepared for the final attack. Skadi led the group, her eyes shining with the certainty that revenge would finally be achieved. After weeks of ambushes and training, the moment had come. The plan was clear. Hakon and Albert, in their arrogance, had arranged a secluded meeting to sign a false peace treaty, a strategic move to try to pacify the growing revolt. But what they did not know was that this would be their final act of treachery. Skadi and her clan hid in the shadows of the trees, preparing for the blow. They knew that if they failed, their lives would be forfeit. But the Wolf Clan leader no longer had any doubts. He had seen the suffering of his people, the pain that betrayal had caused. Nothing else mattered except one thing: the death of the two men who had destroyed his honor and the honor of all who followed him. The camp was empty, with only a few guards from Hakon and Albert. Skadi surveyed the scene with a calculating gaze, her bow resting on her back. She knew there was no room for error. The warriors spread out, strategically positioning themselves around the area, ready to strike at any moment. When the signal was given, the storm of arrows fell upon the field like an unrelenting wave. Albert and Hakon's mercenaries and guards barely had time to react before they were cut down one by one, silently, like shadows dissolving into the darkness. Hakon, the man who had betrayed his own clan for riches and power, tried to fight back, but he was already surrounded. King Albert, sitting in his arrogance, looked at Skadi, finally realizing the fatal mistake he had made. "You have no honor. You never did," Albert shouted, trying to rise. But his words were cut off by the sharp sound of an arrow piercing his throat. The king's death was quick and bloody, but there was no compassion in Skadi's eyes. He had sworn vengeance, and there would be no mercy. Hakon tried to flee, but to no avail. Skadi caught up with him, her eyes full of hatred and justice. The former Jarl of the Wolf Clan was now powerless, his life rapidly slipping away at the hands of those he had betrayed. Skadi did not hesitate. Hakon's death was a reflection of the pain and betrayal the clan had endured over the years. As Albert and Hakon's bodies lay on the ground, Skadi stood over them. The Wolf Clan gathered around her, their faces filled with a mixture of pain, relief, and respect. The silence was profound, and the only thing that broke the stillness was the cold wind that blew across the field. Vengeance had been accomplished, but the future still lay before them. The warriors of the clan approached, and one by one, Skadi's eyes met those of her brothers and sisters. They knew what this meant. Skadi was no longer just the Iftyr. He was the new Jarl of the Wolf clan, chosen for the strength of his leadership, his courage, and his determination. And though the blood of Hakon and Albert still ran hot in the earth, Skadi knew that the greatest test was yet to come. With his rise to power, the Wolf clan was renewed. Skadi would lead with the strength of a man forged by pain, but also with the wisdom gained through experience. He would unite the men and women of the clan in a new era, marked not by betrayal, but by loyalty and honor. The Iftyr now guided the steps of the Wolf clan, and under his leadership, they would grow stronger than ever. For many years, Skadi would rule the clan with a steady hand and a determined heart. He would become a living legend, a figure of respect and strength. His name would echo across the northern lands, and the winds of winter would whisper his story, no longer as a man seeking vengeance, but as the leader of a clan reborn, of a people who would never bow again. Did you like this story? Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next epic sagas. The journey continues.